compulsive scrolling, and overuse. Let's talk about the behavior we all pretend is normal, but is actually a psychological red flag. The endless scroll. You know, when you grab your phone to check one notification and suddenly it's been 47 minutes, 3 memes, 2 trauma dumps, and a recipe you'll never cook. Here's what's really happening. Compulsive scrolling looks harmless, but your brain is basically riding a broken amusement park ride called dopamine anticipation. Every swipe tells your brain, hey, maybe the next thing will be interesting. And your brain goes, okay, cool, one more. That's how behavioral addictions work. Not because the reward is good, but because the maybe keeps you hooked. It's like opening mystery boxes. Except the prize is usually just another cute animal video. And here's the fun twist. When scrolling becomes your default emotional escape, that's when we're entering mental health bingo territory. Instead of dealing with stress, sadness, or that one thought that keeps knocking on your mental door, your brain goes, nope, and distracts itself with content. Psychologists call this avoidance coping, but you can call it pretending everything is fine while aggressively scrolling on social media. The temporary relief feels good, but the emotional crash afterward? Classic anxiety-depression loop. Then there's the part nobody wants to admit. Scrolling starts replacing actual human interaction. If you've ever ignored a message from someone you love but watched 30 strangers make smoothies on TikTok, yeah, that. When online consumption becomes more comfortable than offline connection, the pattern aligns with loneliness, irritability, insomnia, and overall shutdown vibes. At that point, scrolling isn't a hobby. It's a symptom of dysregulated reward pathways. The validation chase. The validation chase, also known as "why haven't they liked my post yet?" syndrome. This happens when posting something online instantly turns into a full-time emotional job. You hit share, and boom, your brain transforms into a stock market ticker, watching the numbers rise, or tragically not rise. And the moment the likes slow down, you suddenly start questioning every major decision you've made since birth. Psychologically, this comes from your brain being a little too addicted to dopamine-driven reinforcement learning, the mechanism behind reward-seeking behavior. Social media platforms are basically casinos with better lighting. Every notification is a tiny slot machine win. And just like slot machines, the reward is inconsistent, which activates variable reward schedules, the same principle behind addictive gambling. This pattern is especially common in people dealing with low self-esteem, social anxiety, or rejection sensitivity, because likes feel like social approval you can measure. So when a post performs well, it feels like a tiny emotional promotion. When it flops, your brain fires you, right on the spot. No severance package. The perfect presence. The perfect presence, also known as I must now spend 11 minutes choosing between 2 nearly identical selfies. Here's the psychology behind it. When someone spends way too much time crafting flawless captions, editing photos until their pores are perfectly blurred, or rehearsing Instagram stories like a TED Talk, that's not just aesthetic commitment. That's performance anxiety dressed as content creation. Perfectionistic posting is strongly linked to obsessive thinking, fear of negative evaluation, and sometimes even trauma-related hypervigilance around visibility. Social media becomes a stage, and the person feels like every post is a high-stakes performance review. One wrong angle, one awkward smile, and suddenly the brain is like, congratulations, we've embarrassed ourselves publicly. The need to curate every detail comes from something psychologists call self-presentational pressure. Basically, the fear that if you don't look perfect, people will form the wrong impression of you. So instead of posting, the brain enters quality control mode. Caption too long? Delete. Emoji in the wrong spot? Rewrite. Image not matching the feed aesthetic? Absolutely not. And here's the kicker. The more someone tries to appear perfect online, the more it usually means they're battling internal dysregulation offline. If the online version of them is spotless, the real-life version is probably tired, overstimulated, and living on iced coffee and self-doubt. Passive scrolling. Passive scrolling, also known as I saw everything today, interacted with nothing, and now I'm mysteriously sad. Here's what's actually going on under the hood. When someone scrolls through social media without liking, commenting, posting, or even responding to messages, that's not just being low-key. Psychologically, this aligns with emotional withdrawal, a common symptom in major depressive disorder and social anxiety disorder. Passive scrolling also connects to something called learned low self-worth. It's when the brain quietly believes, my opinion doesn't matter, or no one wants to hear from me. So it stays silent. The person becomes an observer instead of a participant, collecting information but avoiding connection. It feels safer because there's no risk of judgment, rejection, or social threat activation. Neurologically, passive browsing increases rumination, the repetitive negative thought loop seen in depression. Watching other people's lives without engaging activates the comparison networks, but shuts down the social reward circuits. Translation? You get the envy, but no real bonding. So if someone is lurking on every story but hasn't replied to their best friend in 2 weeks, yeah, that's not mystery vibe behavior. That's a silent mental health alarm. Comparison overload. All right, let's slide into one of the most common, I swear I'm fine behaviors online. Comparison overload. When someone starts feeling jealous, inadequate, or like they're 10 years behind in life, that's not just insecurity. That's upward social comparison, a well-studied cognitive process. Online, it's practically guaranteed, because nobody posts their breakdowns, overdue bills, or existential spirals. Just vacations and gym photos with perfect lighting. Excessive comparison is strongly linked to anxiety, low self-esteem, dysphoric mood, and depressive cognitive distortions. Each scroll reinforces the idea that other people are happy and successful while you're trying to decide what to eat for dinner at 10 p.m. The brain interprets curated content as real data. Emotion wins. Logic cries quietly. This behavior fuels FOMO, the fear of missing out, which is basically your brain throwing a tantrum that other people are having fun without you. Over time, comparison disrupts the reward system, making normal life feel flat. Comparison often leads to behavioral withdrawal, a precursor to depressive episodes, because the person feels too defeated to engage, post, or enjoy their own experiences. Drama and negativity magnet. This is also known as I don't start drama, it finds me. When someone constantly dives into online arguments or treats comment sections like their personal battle arena, that's rarely just strong personality energy. It's often tied to emotional dysregulation, a difficulty managing intense emotions seen in conditions like mood disorders or trauma-linked reactivity. Negative engagement online is strongly associated with affective instability, rapid emotional swings that go from 0 to 200 instantly. The internet becomes the perfect outlet for these unfiltered responses because it offers instant emotional discharge. A person can express anger, frustration, or hurt immediately, without pausing for reflection. And here's where it spirals. After the rant comes post-conflict guilt, shame spirals, or regret rumination, which only worsens the emotional cycle. If you've ever watched someone rage post at 3:14 p.m. and then post a soft, apologetic quote at 3:22 p.m., yeah, that's mood dysregulation doing laps. There's another layer. People who feel ignored, powerless, or emotionally invalidated offline may seek stimulation or visibility online. Drama becomes a substitute for connection, chaotic, messy, loud, but undeniably attention. Psychologists call this negative reinforcement through attention-seeking, where even conflict feels better than emotional invisibility. And then there's trolling, inflammatory comments, harsh jokes, instigating debates for fun. Research shows these behaviors often reflect latent frustration, chronic loneliness, or anger displacement. The emotion isn't really about the topic. It just leaks onto the internet, because that's where the person feels safest expressing it. Reassurance-seeking. Excessive reassurance-seeking, the digital equivalent of checking the oven even though you know the cookies aren't done. When someone obsessively checks whether people are upset with them, rereads their messages, or sends follow-up DMs like just making sure that made sense, it's not politeness. It's anxiety-driven uncertainty rooted in cognitive patterns seen in social anxiety disorder and OCD spectrum rumination. Psychologists call this reassurance-seeking behavior, and it functions like this. A person feels doubt. They ask for reassurance. They get reassurance. Relief lasts 10 seconds. Doubt comes back stronger. This is the classic cycle of negative reinforcement, where reassurance reduces anxiety temporarily, but makes the anxiety worse long-term. This also hits hard around posting. Someone shares something and immediately worries, was that weird? Did I overshare? Their brain enters hyper-evaluation mode, analyzing their own behavior like they're a suspect in a crime documentary. Engagement goes up, anxiety goes up, engagement goes down, anxiety goes up. The graph is always rising. It just doesn't know for what. Socially, this behavior often traces back to inconsistent emotional environments, where the person learned to constantly check if they were safe. Social media becomes the new emotional minefield, and reassurance-seeking becomes a digital survival strategy. The ghost game. Now for one of the most misunderstood behaviors, ghosting, also known as "I vanished because my nervous system smashed the emergency eject button." When someone suddenly disappears from chats, ignores messages, or goes offline for days, it rarely comes from "I'm just vibing." It's more often tied to social withdrawal, a key feature of major depressive episodes, burnout, and overwhelming anxiety. The brain isn't trying to be mysterious. It's trying to avoid cognitive overload. Ghosting becomes a coping strategy when every interaction feels like emotional labor. Notifications become micro-threats. A simple message feels like a task. The brain isn't saying, "I don't want to talk to these people." It's saying, "If I talk to anyone right now, my system will crash." This pattern connects to shutdown responses, a form of dissociative disengagement where the nervous system chooses avoidance to prevent further stress. It's the psychological version of a laptop overheating and powering off to survive. And here's the twist. They may still be online, watching stories, lurking on TikTok, scrolling silently, because passive consumption feels safe while direct interaction feels threatening. This is a classic sign of emotional numbing and avoidant coping. Posting at odd hours. When someone regularly posts late at night, stories, tweets, rants, philosophical monologues, it's not just night owl personality. It's often connected to insomnia, hyperarousal, and emotional dysregulation. Late-night posting spikes when the mind is overstimulated. At night, distractions disappear and intrusive thoughts get louder. Instead of sitting with them, the brain reaches for digital sedation. Posting, scrolling, refreshing. Nighttime social media becomes a coping mechanism. The dopamine hit from engagement offers temporary relief from emotional discomfort, a mental painkiller with a 30-second half-life. Then comes the crash, and the cycle repeats: post, relief, crash, post again. This is tied to hyperarousal states, where the body's stress system refuses to power down even when exhausted. People in this state aren't awake because they want to be. They're awake because their nervous system is stuck in alert mode. Over-apologizing online. And finally, let's talk about the digital version of apologizing to a chair because you bumped into it. Over-apologizing online, also known as "sorry for existing," "sorry for posting," "sorry for being sorry." This is not excessive politeness. It's a symptom of people-pleasing, often rooted in low self-esteem, rejection, sensitivity, and trauma-related fawning behavior. Fawning is part of the fight-flight-freeze-fawn trauma response, where a person tries to avoid conflict by becoming excessively agreeable. The brain predicts rejection, so it apologizes in advance, emotional insurance. This behavior is strongly linked to social anxiety disorder, where the brain overestimates how negative others' reactions will be. Simple actions like posting or sending a message feel dangerous. Cognitively, this behavior stems from personalization, a distortion where someone assumes responsibility for emotions that aren't theirs. Even neutral interactions feel risky. And here's the twist. People who over-apologize tend to be hyper-empathetic. They anticipate conflict that isn't there. They soothe discomfort that doesn't exist. They apologize to prevent problems that would never happen. Now, all these habits look normal until they're not. If you want to see what your brain's really up to, the next video breaks it down.